Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today's video is how to efficiently drive your Prius. I don't know about you, that is usually what I get for each tank of gas. 379 I filled up early, but about 450, 460 miles, generally at 50 miles per gallon, between 50, 53, obviously an outlier here at 59 for an entire tank. But I wanted to share my tips for how to get the best efficiency out of your Prius while also being nice to it, because it's been highly requested, and that's the whole reason everyone buys these cars, right? So let's go ahead, jump right into it. So how do we most efficiently drive our Prius? So before we jump into my big 3 tips on how to drive the Prius most efficiently, we first need to understand exactly how the Prius hybrid system works. And I'm not going to go into a huge depth here, but give you a high-level overview. So when you go and drive your car, you understand the basics and what's really happening behind the scenes of your car. Thankfully, Toyota also includes this energy monitor, which gives us an idea of what's happening while we're trying to drive. So what does the hybrid synergy drive system, what is it comprised of? So we have really 4 main parts, technically 5. So I'll define those here. So we have an internal combustion engine, most obvious, the engine that turns our gasoline or potential energy of flammable gasoline into rotational momentum to prevent or to propel the car forward. Then we have 2 electric motor generators. So this is when I said we have 4. This is technically 2. One motor generator, or MG1, is an AC motor generator, which is used to start the ICE or internal combustion engine. It's also used to charge the high voltage battery. Then you have MG2, or motor generator number 2, and this is our primary electric propulsion device used to propel the car forward. It is also the more powerful of the 2 electric motor generators, and it's also used for regen. So MG2, very important. MG1 also controls kind of the CVT transmission, so it's also very important. Then as our third device, if you're counting MG1 and 2 as one, is the inverters. So there are a number of inverters in the Prius, both DC to AC converters, inverters, and then you have DC to DC converters as well. I'll lump them into one term called an inverter, because that'll be easier to understand, but that allows the high voltage battery and the electric motors and the gasoline engine to all function together in synergy, hence the name Synergy Drive. And then the final item, or the 4th or 5th, depending on how you're counting, is the high voltage battery. So the 202 volt nickel metal hydride 1.6 kilowatt hour battery that again can store the regen energy and also use that regen energy when the gasoline engine or ICE is unable to provide enough up a large hill or accelerating, for instance. The high voltage battery likes to stay between 40 and 80% state of charge. What you're seeing now on your screen is right about 60%. When you lose each bar, it's roughly, again, 5%. So the indicator is not indicative of 0 to 100%, more like, let's show you what normal capacity is, which is this one here. Each bar dropped is about 5%. Each bar gained is about 5%. So the bar will really only display up to 70% charge, but you could go up to 80, technically speaking. Now, if the battery is within optimal temperature ranges, you will see a charge limit, so how much power can flow into the battery, as about 25 kilowatt hours. We featured this in a previous video. You also will have a discharge current limit, or power leaving the battery, at a maximum power of 21 kilowatt hours. And those are not sustained values, generally speaking. Obviously, if you have the car floored and you're accelerating up a very large hill or trying to pass somebody or merge on a highway, you may see those numbers, but not for a very long extended period of time. Now, something else to note as well is that 25 charge limit and 21 discharge current limit are, again, assuming optimal temperatures. If there is a situation where the hybrid battery is too low, or at or below 40% state of charge, or lower than 60% state of charge, the power from the battery may very well be lower than that. If your hybrid battery temperature is higher than 100 degrees, you could start seeing decreasing amounts of charge and discharge current limits as well. This also goes if the battery is too cold as well, so in winter. So keeping that in mind, when you're driving your car, you want to stay within those temperature ranges. We have another whole video dedicated to that as well. Those are some things to consider as well, as far as how is the car performing. In rare situations, if it's super hot, your hybrid battery is at 130-ish degrees, the internal combustion engine, or ICE, will not turn off. So if you have a situation like that where the engine does not turn off, using Hybrid Assistant, you can monitor those temperatures. We have a video on that as well. You can consider that as a tip as well. So enough of us talking about how the Prius works. Let's go ahead and jump into what it looks like while you're driving. So while the car is running, you will see your energy monitor, and that's what I'm displaying right now. So the energy monitor will tell you what's going on within the hybrid system, which we just described, and how it can function in real time while you're driving. So right now, and what you're seeing here is a screenshot, is the energy monitor displaying what it looks like when the car is coasting. So coasting means there is no power leaving the engine going into the electric motor to power the battery. There's no power leaving the battery going into the electric motor to power the wheels. So nothing's happening here, and this is exactly where you want to be as much as possible. The car is essentially rolling using no energy. It's a cart for all intents and purposes, like a golf cart. You also can have a mode, as we've described, where you have energy leaving the battery, going into an electric motor to then power the wheels. This is a very efficient way to move if you're going at a lower rate of speed. However, as you increase in speed, because there's no transmission for the electric system, it's going to be less efficient at higher rates of speed. Also noting, again, that you are limited to a certain amount of power leaving the battery at any given time, and the battery likes to be between 40 and 80% state of charge. That can be affected as well as far as your efficiency. Now, this other more complicated mode that you're seeing here is power leaving the engine and going into the wheels. You also have power leaving the engine, powering the electric motor generator, MG1, and it's also then powering the wheels as well. And you have power leaving the battery, going into the electric motor generator to powering your wheels as well. So it's kind of a complicated way that all of these things can work together and very efficiently power your car. But how do you drive in synergy to allow your car to function best? So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to drive my car and talk about my 3 big tips on how to get the best efficiency out of your Prius. So we just started our car and we are driving, and one thing you'll note, I may have just seen there briefly, is that while you first start your car and it starts to run, you will see the engine stages just below the RPM. And that's to display and kind of tell you where the engine is in as far as warming up. So it'll start with S1, move its way to S2, and then S3 and S4. Those are different stages of hybrid operation. So as I'm driving through my neighborhood here, I am walking through and getting to the entrance. So we have an S2 right now. We're only at 113, 114 degrees. And you'll see over on the top right side the amount of power that I have leaving and entering the battery. So on the left side, that bar that now is at about 20 kilowatt hours is power leaving the engine. So that's how much power is being forced onto the wheels and to propel the car forward. And then on the right side, you have, it's a positive and a negative number to show you how much power is leaving or entering the battery. Below that graph that's in green or blue on that right side, you will also see your charge or state of charge and the battery temperature. So all that's super helpful when you're trying to drive your car and as you are meandering your way down the road. So now I'm approaching a large downhill. So one of my biggest tips, and I'll get into my big 3 tips now. So tip number 1 is do not waste acceleration. So what does that mean? So if I'm approaching a hill like I am right now, and I would like to obviously not accelerate to a speed that's above the speed limit in a way that could get me pulled over or be unsafe, I'm going to use regen braking, and I'm not wasting acceleration best I can. Meaning don't accelerate towards a downhill if you can help it. So as I go down the hill, I'm pressing on the brake, and you'll see that little green ball go from the bottom of the screen up towards the middle of that white circle. What that's doing is it's telling me how hard I can press on the brake pedal and only be using regen. So that's how to efficiently, or most efficiently, press on the brake pedal. This is something that comes with feel as well as you drive the car, so you'll feel when you actually engage the physical brakes on the car, which obviously are very inefficient. They convert your forward momentum into simply just heat energy, which is completely wasted. But if we capture it all as regen, we are then able to store it for later use, charge up our battery, and again, use that for forward momentum later. So I'll press on the brake, you'll see that little ball. It is approaching that middle of that white circle. And once your battery gets, again, most of the way charged, you won't be able to stuff very much electricity into it. So right now, my battery charge is at 68%. I'm approaching the bottom of the hill here, and it should get, about to 70, and I engage the real or physical brakes at the very end there. That is unavoidable below 6 miles per hour also, by the way. So as you approach slower speeds, you will have to use the physical brakes. There's no shame in that. So that's number one, don't waste acceleration. So that means if there's a red light, don't race up to it so you can then slam on your brakes, because anytime you change energies or you are transferring energy from one form to another, you are wasting it because there are inefficiencies. So if you run your electric engine, which is not 100% efficient, then you have to recapture that energy in the form of regen braking, only to then spend it again. You're slowly losing energy in the form of fuel, because that's where it started. So that's tip number one. Tip number two is planning ahead while driving, which we just kind of covered. So that's regen braking. Don't brake too hard if you can help it. So that means as you're going down a large downhill, using regen early and using it only up to the point where, again, you're not using physical brakes, can allow you to recapture more of the energy that you otherwise would lose in the form of disc brakes and heat. So tip number three, and again, we kind of teased this one at the beginning of the video here, is to keep your state of charge of your battery, and that is your hybrid battery, in range. So that means don't have it be super charged up. So if it's at 80% or you go down a large hill, maybe allowing the electric to use more of that charge immediately, so that way you have room for if you need to brake to recapture that. So keeping you within the allowable range for state of charge or closer to that 60% will make you more efficient. And then also keeping your hybrid battery temperature in an acceptable range as well. So right now I'm at 87 degrees. If I click on my battery here, you'll see I'm still at the 25 charge current limit and 21 discharge current limit. So all of this I can see on the screen at once. So those are my big three tips on how to drive efficiently. Obviously this comes with practice, and you're not going to immediately understand how to drive your car right off of the gate or right out of the gate. But those are my big three tips. So we also have a screen on the Prius as well called the hybrid system indicator, and I want to describe exactly how that works as well, just because it is a very helpful tool if you're not using hybrid assistant. If you are using hybrid assistant, I recommend its use way much over the hybrid system indicator, though again, it still has its place in helping you drive efficiently. So let's go ahead and look at the hybrid system indicator and how to use it. Okay, so the hybrid system indicator is really a helpful tool for how to drive your car. So right now I'm regenning, you can see the charge bar will light up. It doesn't show you how hard you can press on the brake like the hybrid assistant can. It generally shows you when you're filling the charge bar. But then you also have a bar in the middle that you're seeing there. That middle bar is how hard you can press on the gas pedal until you kick on your engine. And then you also have a power meter, which really doesn't do anything other than showing you that you're pressing on the pedal a little bit more aggressively. Mainly this is helpful to be used to show when you have power going into the battery, i.e. you are filling up the charge bar, or when you're about to kick on the engine from pressing on the pedal. That's its main use. And I am stuck at a train, so we'll wait for this train to pass. I'll go ahead and hit pause here, and then as soon as we pull away, I'll hit start, and we'll see and hear the engine kick on as I get to that middle bar. All right, the train is pulled away. You'll see my center bar here is not crossed the middle yet. And when it does, and if you do have a newer Prius, i.e. 2012 or newer, you will also have a EV light. So I just went over the middle, the engine is kicked on, and my real-time efficiency graph is now a little bit lower. So you can see the engine has kicked on. One thing I have noted as well, so not necessarily a built-in feature of the hybrid system indicator, but something to look for. Whenever you have your accelerator pedal just over the middle bar, it is a very efficient RPM for the engine, again, depending on your speed. It's more of a, I guess, generalized term or generalized happening. Doesn't actually mean that you will always drive more efficiently while pressing the pedal that far down. But I've noticed that you always get close to 50 whenever it's right there. Now, if you are lower than 46 miles an hour, anytime you release off the gas pedal and you are in stage 4 of engine operation, you will, if you release the gas pedal entirely, you will see your gas engine turn off. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Anything over 46 miles an hour, 45 point something, you will have your gas engine stay on. However, you can enter something called no fuel mode, which is where you release the gas pedal and you will see that your engine is still running, but it's not actually putting gasoline into your engine. And what does this mean? Let's jump back to hybrid assistant and I'll show you that in real time. All right, so what you're seeing here is we are in no fuel mode. We are at minus, or I guess 1,000 RPM in S3 there. And whenever that RPM meter there goes into that yellow color, that's telling you that you are in a power limiting situation. And that's because the engine's spinning without any fuel entering it. So again, I'll release my gas pedal at just over 45, and you'll see that it turns yellow, indicating that we are in no fuel mode. You'll also see minus 1.4 as the amount of power going to the wheels. That's because it's putting a drag on the wheels. I might also see some colors, so some of this we may have covered during the hybrid assistant review as well, but those colors are indicative of how efficient the engine is operating. So right now at 11 kilowatts, you'll see here that it's in blue. That tells me that at 1300 RPMs with 11 kilowatts leaving the engine, however much is entering in terms of fuel, we are driving efficiently while the engine's running. Of course, if I release that gas pedal and enter no fuel mode, obviously no fuel is entering the engine. As I approach the downhill, something that I like to do is allow the speed. If the speed limit is 45, allow it to be my car to travel at exactly 45. Release off the gas pedal, allow myself to enter no fuel mode or EV mode, whatever's appropriate here. And so now the engine's off, I'm approaching a light. As soon as I see it turn yellow, I maximize my regen efficiency best I can to then allow most of that energy to enter the battery. All right, so putting my big 3 tips into practice. So I am going to try and do all 3 things: not waste acceleration, more efficiently brake by planning ahead as I approach stoplights and go down hills, etc. And I'm also going to try and keep my hybrid battery in an acceptable range as well as I drive home. So I just went and got gas. I'm now on the way home, and you'll see here as I press on the gas, that charge meter will fill. I'm approaching a red light, so I might allow it to charge here. But my idea or my goal is to not waste the acceleration that I've already spent energy to obtain. So I'm going to try and time this red light. We'll see if it turns green on us. If not, we can regen. We should have the ability to not press too hard on the brake here and it looks like that'll be the case. You're not going to time every light, but in this time I didn't go ahead and use more than the allowable brake power. So then the light, of course, turns green as soon as we come to a full stop. So then we'll hit the gas, accelerate again. Again, not trying to waste any of our acceleration. I'll accelerate up to the speed limit, and then I'm going to release off the gas pedal. It'll be lower than 46 miles an hour. I'm at 42 miles an hour currently. You will see the gas engine has turned off. So we are now coasting. As you can see here, using just a little bit of electric power. And again, I'm approaching another light, so I'm going to let myself coast here. We'll see our mileage or our consumption graph start to go up. You also may be able to hear the hybrid battery fan kick on. It's 96 degrees. So we want to keep that at 95-ish. That's what I have set in the app. So it looks like we just had that cool back down. Approaching another light here. This is a yield, so I'll have to use some regen. Again, not even filling the whole charge bar. Not using any of our physical brakes. And the process starts over. We accelerate again. This time it's a downhill, but I do have to accelerate up to the speed limit. So I'll accelerate up to the speed limit best I can, and then again release the gas pedal and go back into coast mode where I fill up, where I press the gas slightly to make that charge meter fill in. So now I'm in that coast mode, which again can be displayed right here. So if we press on the gas slightly, you'll see it's still registering some regen, so I can press a little bit more. It's right in between charging and regen is where you want to be. About like that. So now we're going up a hill. You can see our mileage has increased to 65. Whenever I go up a hill as well, I'll accelerate to the maximum speed that I can go, so that'd be like the speed limit. And again, trying to make sure that I have the most speed I can get before I go up a hill, so that way I can allow the car to decelerate slightly and not try and mash the throttle up the hill, because the car does run more efficiently not at 4,000 RPM. So now we're approaching a stoplight, so I'll let the regen take some of our energy from us as we come to a slow stop. And again, not slamming on the brake, trying not to waste very much of our acceleration. Accelerate after the stoplight. Stop sign there. I'll get up to speed, and we have another downhill coming up. So what I'm going to do, again, come up to the top of the hill, release the gas pedal, stay in that coast mode. And if you do have the engine off, something you can do. So if the engine is already off, so I'm at 41 miles an hour. If the engine's already off, you can put the car in neutral, and the engine will stay off while you're in neutral. So if the engine's already off, it will stay off. If the engine is running and you put it in neutral, it will idle, which obviously uses more gas than if it was off. So make sure the engine's off before you put it in neutral, but neutral is the best way to coast if the engine's already off. So I'm basically just rolling down a hill here. You also see my foot's completely off the gas, and the charge meter is completely empty, and our mileage is continually increasing. We have 3 miles into our trip here. Now, a lot of the tips that I have provided, so the 3 big tips I provided, as well as just generally how the Prius works, are very useful when you're in a city environment. If you are driving on the highway, these become increasingly not quite as helpful. And the reason is, when you're on a highway, there's not much you can do. There's not very much braking. There's not very much accelerating. You just kind of maintain a certain speed. So for that, obviously, you're kind of at the whim or at the mercy of the wind conditions, how fast you're driving. So all you can really do for that is either drive slower or drive in the direction of the wind. So I haven't focused on those for that reason, because again, you're kind of at the mercy of your conditions. I'll also say make sure your tires are inflated to an appropriate PSI. That will really help your mileage. If they are too low, it'll increase additional drag onto the car for no reason. But we'll see what we can end up with by the time we get home here. So we're at 70 miles per gallon right now. We're going up another hill, preparing for another downhill, or at least a level hill here. And you'll notice the entire time my battery has not gotten full or less full than around 50 to 60% state of charge. That bar on my battery meter hasn't gone up or down. So the secret to getting good mileage has nothing to do with using your battery power in a specific way, other than, just keeping it in that acceptable range. So very simple method. So again, I'm coasting right around 41 miles an hour. Some will say the pulse and glide technique works really well, so that's where you'll pulse up to a specified temperature or speed. I like to pulse up to around 43, 45, and then you release from the gas pedal, and you will then allow yourself to glide, or what I'm doing right now, where basically you're coasting down to about 35 or so. It's a very effective technique because the engine stays off for longer, and again, you're mostly just rolling, using the gas engine for short periods of time where it's most efficient, which is accelerating. So I'll pulse back up to around 40. And if you do have cars in front of you or behind you, keeping them in mind, your job is not to make them be more efficient, it's to make you be more efficient. But also, if you're going to be annoying the driver behind you because you're pulsing up to certain speeds and then slowing back down, you may just eat those couple cents and drive like a normal human being during those times. Being efficient is fun, but there are other people to consider as well. So it looks like we'll end up with a pretty good mileage here, and your conditions do matter as well. So right now it's only 88 degrees outside and the car started in the garage, so I don't have my AC blasting. If you did, you might see your hybrid battery decrease in charge at a higher rate. And in the winter, your gasoline engine is what's controlling your heat in your car. So if you have the heat in the car turned on, the gas engine may run simply to try and make sure that the cabin's warm. So again, some of those conditions can impact your mileage as well. We'll see. We're going to have a trouble getting to 80 miles per gallon or keeping it at 80. One, that's an extremely high number, but then two, we have a very large uphill coming, and that one, there's not much I can do other than, get about 20 miles per gallon the whole way up the hill because it's very steep. All right, so we are approaching a decrease in speed limit, so we'll have to use some regen here. Store that in the battery. Then use some of it as we try and stay at our speed limit. So I'm at a very slow 28 miles an hour now, so now it's a little bit more efficient to use a little bit of electric to maintain a speed versus kicking on the engine for a couple seconds. So I'll use a little bit of electric here to maintain my speed. And then as I approach this uphill, again, not much I can do. I just need to maintain my speed as I go up the hill. I can't simply drop to 0 miles an hour, so I'll have to hit the gas, go up this large uphill. And like I said, this will have a very large hit on our miles per gallon. That's another thing too. I mean, if you have hills, don't be too discouraged by bad mileage. If there are hills, that's just a part of driving, and there's not much you can do about them. You can, like I said, plan for them, so don't waste acceleration. If you're going up a hill, don't try and go so fast up the hill that now you have extra speed that you're then hitting the brakes to try and waste that speed. That's all you really have control over when you're going up or down a hill. All right, so we are still going up this hill. Like I said, it's a very large hill, and it's now brought our mileage from like 85 to 69 miles per gallon. We're still going up the hill. We are approaching the top here. And what I've done, so before we got to the base of the hill, I accelerated a little bit, so I had some speed that I could use. And again, slowly decrease my speed as I approach the top. And now that I'm at the top, I'm going to release my pedal. I am now going to coast. And I'm now going slower than I was when I approached the hill, but I do have a downhill now because I live in a hilly area. So I will then regen, again, basically just enough to fill my charge bar, or if I'm using hybrid assistant, making sure that I'm not letting that little ball go above the green circle. And then as I go through my neighborhood, this is again prime real estate for when you might want to consider using only electric power if you have that option. So I'm going to navigate through the neighborhood using only electric power. Another thing as well, it's not even one of my big tips because I don't think it makes a huge difference, but it's worth considering. When you store your car with less than a full state of charge, and full state of charge being 60% roughly, where the car wants to be, you're allowing the car to, during its warm-up cycle, charge the hybrid battery, which means less of that energy wasted during the warm-up cycle, which can be really helpful. So we are now, we've arrived, and you can see here our mileage ended up at about 66 miles per gallon. So not bad. This is very repeatable. On this route, I get about that every time. And again, with hills, that can decrease your mileage as well. But the general efficiency of your car will very much depend on how you drive. I have a couple other family members that have these Priuses and drive them as well, and they will routinely only get 40 miles per gallon. And then I'll hop behind the wheel and I can easily get 50 to 55. So knowing that, I hope these tips help you, and I hope you like this content. If you did like, go ahead and leave a like and go ahead and subscribe for similar content. In future videos, we do have some very cool things on the horizon, one of which is potentially changing our nickel metal hydride battery chemistry over to lithium. So that is on the horizon and almost here. Stay tuned for that and have a good one. We'll catch you in the next video.